Hi everyone! Today I'm going to talk about a case that Corsair is releasing today, the 5000D. Now this case is basically the slightly bigger and a slightly improved brother of the 4000 series from last year, but don't let the bigger part confuse you. It is still, very much so, a mid-sized tower case. And just like its little brother, there are three versions that you can choose from. The closed version that obviously has a closed front panel, the airflow version with an open mesh front, and of course the RGB version that comes with a lot more glass and 3 RGB fans. When it comes to color, you can either go for a white one with some nice gray details, or you can go for a completely black one. And as you can see right here, I opted for the white airflow version, so that's what I'll be covering today. Now you will have to set aside $150 or 155 euros for this one. The closed one will be about the same, and the RGB version will be around $40 more, as it comes with 3 RGB fans and an RGB controller. And considering the price, you should, pretty much expect a premium experience with this case as well. So let's see if Corsair managed to pull that off. Let's go. This video is brought to you by Gigabyte and their brand new Aorus FI27QX gaming monitor. This monitor features a 240Hz refresh rate, both G-Sync support and FreeSync premium support, so it's great for gamers, and on top of that it has great image quality and almost perfect color reproduction thanks to its excellent Quad HD IPS panel. If you're looking for an ultimate all-arounder, check this monitor out using the links in the description below. When it comes to size, this case is 52 centimeters tall, 52 centimeters deep, and 24.5 centimeters wide, so it is a little bit wider than average, but that will help compatibility and cable management later on. Now design-wise, I think the combination of white and gray looks really nice and really clean, but it will still come down to personal taste and what you like. But even though the looks are very subjective, the build quality isn't, and this case is really well built. It is mostly made of metal with some plastic details, but it just feels well done, and the finish is just really good without any uneven gaps, edges, or other inconsistencies. The whole front is perforated for airflow, and as you can see, there are large gaps on the side of the front panel as well. Now that might seem a bit odd since the front is already pretty open, but remember that the closed and the RGB versions will have a closed and a glass panel respectively, so they will rely on these gaps for cooling. The right side panel is pretty interesting as it has an opening for 3 fans or a side radiator as well. Again, that might seem a bit over the top for a model that already has an open front, but I guess it will be handy for the other versions, and it will give you another option to build a system with a different look as well. Now the top is well ventilated as well and has the same perforated design as the front. There's also a lot of space under the panel, so you can actually squeeze some extra fans there for some extra cooling if you want to. The front I/O offers 2 USB 3.0 ports and 1 Type-C port. Now I know that 4 USB 3 connections might have been nicer, but a lot of motherboards still don't have the required headers for that, so let's say this is acceptable. I think where this case really shines though is the details. So you have the little triangle perforations on the outside, matching those on the inside. There's little Corsair logos everywhere, the yellow details, and then all the practical things like the fact that the metal panels are really easy to take off, so you can very easily access the dust filters on the front, on the top, and on the side of the case. There's another dust filter in the back for your power supply as well, but that one is pretty basic. On the inside, the 5000D looks pretty typical. At first, there's the usual PSU cover, and there is plenty of space to work with, as you would expect from a tower of this size. You can fit a GPU that is up to 420 millimeters long and an air cooler that is up to 170 millimeters tall, so basically you can fit most of the coolers on the market. There's also a lot of space for radiators as well. You can fit up to a 360 millimeter radiator in the top as well as in the front. And the interesting part is the extra cover to close off your PSU shroud if you do put a large radiator in the front. It will not just look cleaner from the inside, but it should also direct more air in the direction of your components. Next to the motherboard, you get this nice cable cover as well, which is supposed to hide all the connections and make your build look even cleaner. However, most 24-pin cables are pretty stubborn and might need some convincing. And the same goes for the USB 3.0 headers as well, but Corsair actually included a little angled connector for it, which solves this problem pretty well. I just think it's a bit of a shame that they didn't have something similar for the 24-pin as well. You get two 120mm fans by default, which does feel a bit cheap considering the price of the case and that the whole case is about airflow. Now, of course, you can add more yourself if you want to, but I really think a third fan would have been a really nice addition at the very least. That way you can, put 3 of the same fans in the front and then pick a fan yourself for the back to either match your air cooler or your all-in-one cooler. Now, when you take off the back panel, you can see that they clearly put a lot of work into the cable management as well. There's just a ton of space both behind the motherboard tray and especially behind the cable cover with plenty of routing options. There's also an extra door to hold all the cables behind the motherboard in place, and there are a lot of plastic clips where you can use the extra included Velcro strips if you need to. Now, you can be totally lazy and basically not bother managing any cables and just hide them behind the door and leave it like that. But if you want to be super OCD as well, there is plenty of ways to do so. There's a fan hub included as well, and the only thing that is a little bit more limiting is the storage space. So there is space for 3 2.5-inch drives and 2 3.5-inch drives in the movable or removable drive in the bottom. However, if you combine a really large power supply with a 360mm radiator in the front, you will lose your 3.5-inch drives completely, so do keep that in mind. But let's see the build I have here. Since it's a pretty high-end case, I wanted to make a really high-power rig as well, so I opted for the 16-core Ryzen 9 5950X together with MSI Supreme RTX 3090. Now, I actually didn't have any X570 boards spare, so for this build I used a B550 Tomahawk, which actually did pretty fine in this setup, as you will see later on. And the GPU is one of the longest GPUs on the market, and as you can see right here, you still have plenty of space for a radiator and some fans in the front. Now, I did use the GPU holder as well that comes with this GPU because this card is extremely heavy. Now for the cooling, I have a Corsair iQ H100i Elite Capellix, which also launches today, so do check it out. And the issue I had with the 4000 series case was that if you mount the water cooler on the top like this, it will leave very little space for the RAM, so I had to opt for the low profile modules. And because this case is a bit taller than the 4000 series, there's actually plenty of space for a radiator and fans in the top and a tall RGB memory. So I used the Corsair Dominator Platinum RGB modules in this one to stay true to this white-black Corsair MSI theme. Now, since there is so much space, both for components on the inside and cables on the back, putting all of this together was just super easy and pretty uneventful. Now, the only thing was the 24-pin cable was a bit rougher to stuff under the cover, but that's pretty much it. I would say this case is very user-friendly. But let's see how this case actually performs in a full CPU and GPU stress test. Now, when you set the fans to 40 decibels at 50 centimeters distance, which is what I consider an acceptable noise level for a high-end system under load, I ended up with the following results. 77 degrees on the 16-core Ryzen CPU is pretty good, 69 degrees on a high-end 3090 is great, and a case temperature of 38 degrees after an hour of stressing makes for a really good result overall. Also, under 60 degrees on the Tomahawk VRMs with such a powerful CPU was really nice to see, especially considering the fact that this is actually a pretty reasonably priced motherboard. Obviously, if you're just gaming or editing or watching something, the power consumption will be lower, so from a real-world perspective, the cooling is not really going to be an issue here at all. I would have liked to see some extra fans yet again, but the design clearly works fine even with 2 fans and even with a really powerful rig like this one. Now, to conclude all this, I think that Corsair actually did a pretty good job here. It performs well, it is well built, it is exceptionally easy to work with, and it's going to be very easy to keep clean in the long term. I would have liked to see at least one extra fan, again, even if performance is solid without it, but it's hard to point out anything else that, they objectively should have done better. Now, of course, picking a case always depends on your own taste and how much you want to spend on it. And if you don't like how this one looks, there are plenty of other cases to choose from. And if you're on a tighter budget, there is definitely a lot of cheaper cases that will be completely fine. But if you really do like the way this case looks and you are considering it, I think the price is actually pretty reasonable considering what you're getting with this case. Now that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this review. If you did, please give me a like and let me know in the comments down below what do you think about this case. Bye guys, and see you in the next one.